I listened close to what was coming over the radio, and I was put back just like everybody else, as it seems like the full human settlement actually called us for assistance. Why would they call a village like ours for assistance? But as it turns out, another bug queen had been spotted, and she was close. It was easy to understand that she had actually awakened up from her winter hibernation. Why they didn't spot her before, I didn't know, didn't care. But she was on the move. And usually when you wake up from hibernation, you're hungry and you're going to head towards the closest food source you can. On top of that, there was a huge nest of wasps that had been reported deep in the west. And all I could say is that was one problem at a time. We started getting as much information as we could, and the data began coming in, and we got a much better idea of what the issue was and how to deal with it. As it turned out, she was about to enter a city that the military first took on two separate queens, and now it's being overrun by the queen's little swarm. These smaller bugs swarm the area and kill everyone and everything and destroy everything they get too, usually destroying equipment that either cannot be replaced or is very difficult to do so. It is of note that we and the humans might be able to make life much better for us slowly as we get our tech level back up to what it was before the incident that changed us from human to whatever in the hell I am. If the village were to lose a piece of equipment, like say a tractor, our production would drop significantly, and then we're not sure if we'd be able to keep a population this large from starving over the next winter. For the military in charge of the full human settlement, they cannot replace things like vehicles and aircraft. They can't barely get parts. They have to cannibalize many pieces of equipment just to keep others running. It's bad enough that it takes months to replace a single rocket pod's worth of ordnance, as they have to somehow find the pieces, fabricate everything, get the chemicals for the charge, and have somebody there with enough knowledge to actually build the damn things. Being that they blew through a lot of ammo in the first few years of all this craziness, there was something we had to do, and that's conserve. And in order to actually conserve ordnance and materials, more personnel are going to be needed. To this end, they call for us. This means that if the group we brought in wants to stay in the village, they're going to have to join this battle whether they want to or not. This way they can prove to everybody that they have the capacity and the willingness to change, to put their necks on the line for everyone else. The conversation we had over the radio went back and forth as we deliberated, and then the injured dragon girl entered again. She looks like she's recovered mostly. She's not wobbling anymore. She yells about how she will never work with the humans again. Even though she did have some in her group that were willing to work with us, she would yell, "Do you know what they did to us?" She began to talk about her mistreatment again, and those on the other end of the radio didn't even stop her from ranting about what they did to her. How her group was treated, dealing with the hunger, watching her allies die while roving bands of people shot at them, attacked them. Hunting parties actually came down on them while they're trying to simply camp. And because of that, they couldn't actually stop and gain any food. They were forced to eat whatever they could, and that meant they had to eat human just to survive, which made many of them weaker, at least they believed, as they were not the creatures that they changed into, but no, now they were much more human, and they believed this made them, well, slower, or weaker, or what have you. Eventually, during her rant, I stood up and had to smack my tail on the ground to get her attention. I had to raise my voice into an old commanding voice I learned how to do a long time ago. "These are not those people. We have been working together with them to stay alive. Now look around you. Are we trying to threaten you? Or have we given you an opportunity to become more than just a simple marauder, just someone who lives hand to mouth. Don't you want something better? Besides, you wouldn't be working with them. You'd be working with us. I even insinuated as slamming my fist against my chest, almost cutting myself on my own talons. Because of that, she paused to think, and thankfully the convoy commander cut in after a few moments, going, "Now that is settled. We need to work out the details now." One of the details I found very interesting is that the full humans, is kind of what we call those who aren't like me, haven't changed. The full humans that originally we thought were coming to take the territory, turns out the new data had come in and the recon groups were watching them real close. Turns out they weren't attacking, they were running. They were running away from these bugs. And judging by the way they're going, they might just lead the queen right into the kill zone. But we gotta act quick. We put the plan together, which was a standard plan for us with the weapons and ordnance we had. And with the plan set, we prepared everything we needed. Thankfully, most of us kept all our gear together so that we could simply put it on really quick. Many of us had to hurry to our own homesteads to pick up what we needed and hurry back, which would put us behind by a couple hours, but it would be worth it considering we would be bringing more toys to this party. More party favors, one could say. As we checked out the data, we could see that the queen was more or less ant-based, meaning that she's not going to be able to fly and neither any of her minions will be able to fly. This should allow those of us to stay in the air to be able to work our magic without being in too much danger. Of course, once this tubby bitch is actually coerced into place, the full humans will need to use their few remaining artillery rounds to clear some of the smaller bugs away while still being able to attack the queen. With any luck at all, they should be able to get her to expose her underside, or at least a few of her more squishy parts, as getting through the carapace was difficult, to say the least, especially if they've been around for a few years. As it turns out, these insect queens, their carapace just gets denser and denser the longer they're alive. And if we're able to get at the squishy bits, we should be able to end the battle quickly. If we can get her to rush forward, the anti-tank landmines that are already being placed should take care of her. I say should because every queen is a bit different. Different sizes, different carapace, shape and size, density, even the mentality is different. And some even have wings. And in many cases, the intelligence level is very different. In some cases, I would say vastly different. Though one thing is a commonplace here. There's still bugs, and we can squish them just like bugs. Speaking of which, the Arachne, all they had to hear was Bug Queen, and you couldn't drag them away from this fight if you freaking tried. Any of them that had a chance to feast on the eggs inside the queen, especially fresh out of her, I swear it's like a crack pipe in front of an addict. They just go absolutely nuts. The one thing I worry about is once they have a few of these, they act like they're kind of drinking too much, as in they just kind of lay down and they're just kind of in their own word for a while. I don't know if they're actually drunk or high, but when they start coming out of it, let's just say we have to invite many of the soldiers, and many of the younger guys tend to hide. They get beyond amorous, actually aggressively so. In some cases, I've had to actually fly for several days straight, and so have my sons. In one case, my youngest was too young to fly, and I had to carry him for 4 days. Normally, I can stay awake longer than that, but not flying for that long. Man, my wings were tired. Yet tired wings is something I can deal with if it comes to their help, because they can handle these bugs better than anybody else. I myself would lead the flyers on the way there because I've been to this city before. And anybody else who can't fly, well, they're going to have to take the trucks. And unfortunately, a large percentage would have to get on the trucks. This left a little bit of a problem. You see, our centaur wanted to go, and there was actually an issue because she's kind of large. That means there's not enough room. She offered to actually run behind the convoy the whole way, and everybody thought this was nuts. And for a moment, I did wonder why she was so adamant until I noticed the truck coming up and the guy out the top just waving both arms trying to get her attention. That was the father of her child. I swear she had to pick the strongest guy she could find. That dude is wider than a Mack truck. And even though they were both going, they had to tell their son he had to stay behind. He was not exactly happy about this, and I had to go in his face myself and say, look, you're too young. If my son was another couple years younger, he wouldn't go either. You understand? He kind of looked at me sideways and kind of shuffled his hooves a little bit. He was not happy about it, but he understood. A few soldiers were actually shocked and started cursing up a storm when the elves actually showed up. And they began to get very, very flustered as they looked at the elves' beauty. It didn't matter male or female. They just seemed to be very, very attractive. Another thing that shocked the soldiers is when the halflings showed up to drop off some supplies. A few of them wanted to go, but when one of the soldiers thought he'd be funny and say, "This is going to be no place for a hobbit," I turned over, and if somebody else hadn't done it, I would have backhanded this dude. Thankfully, his NCO actually knocked him straight to the ground and said, "Don't ever say that again." Apparently, the young guy didn't understand. You never want to piss off your support unit, or you're not going to get support. Dumbass. Speaking of which, we ended up having to use our own flatbed trucks for our two lamias, both the male and female. She was a little put back that the young guy wasn't going to be in the same truck as her, but did understand that two of them together, yeah, there wouldn't be any suspension left on that vehicle. As much as we like the lamias, they're heavy. The lamias climbed in first and basically coiled up. Everybody was basically going to sit on them like a cushion, which they didn't like, but you know what, they had to deal with it. Everybody just had to make sure they didn't extend their claws, like the felines, canines, our one bear, everybody who just wanted to go. This included the rest of the capture group that we just had. To my shock, I didn't even notice before, but they actually have a minotaur. I can't really tell his age. If I had to guess, somewhere about, I don't know, late teens, early 20s maybe. He looks really young. I wonder how that's going to go over with our Minotaur female. If she's going to find him attractive or not, but whatever. We don't have time to worry about that. When we get back, perhaps I'll introduce them, though. And, well, we'll see what happens. As the trucks are going, we simply watch from the air as they drive really fast over to the rally point. Once there, everybody climbs out, sets up their weapons, and simply grab anything that the military is willing to hand them. When I landed, one of the soldiers actually walked up and tried to hand me an M4, but I had to very politely remind him that he's an idiot, and I can't carry those anymore. Not that I don't know how to shoot the damn thing. Trust me, if I didn't have these talents, I would definitely be able to handle one without any problems at all. I told him I'd simply stick with grenades and these bug blades. He looked at me and said, "Bug blades? What?" I pulled one out and showed it to him. He freaked out because apparently he's had to deal with the mantises before, and they almost killed him. So I simply put the blades back and said, "So, how about those grenades?" Thankfully, we got a couple bandoliers of different types of grenades, which really made our eyes open, and we definitely wanted to smile, or at least I wanted to. Sometimes I really wish I could have moped. Before leaving, a couple folks said I looked like a total badass. I said, "What?" And then I realized that with several rows of bandoliers across my chest, and my blades, and my bug armor, I'm sitting here with my wings wide open and standing at almost 8 feet tall. I must look really intimidating. I looked around at all the flyers to include my sons and the girls, most of which were dating my sons, and thought, they do look like badasses. Although I'm sure they kind of wish they could use a firearm, as my middle son was still cursing up a storm that every time he picked up a weapon he couldn't get his talon inside the trigger well. Regardless of this, once everyone was ready, we took to the skies and got in our position. As we started to circle around, we just waited for the signal for our circles to break. I looked down and I could see the mine layers were just finishing up. I looked over on the far side of the city and I could see the Queen entering the city, and thought to myself, if everything goes like clockwork, the flyers will be with me and will drop our ordnance. The incinerators will push the Queen forward. We'll be able to take out a few more of theirs, and she'll end up right in the kill zone. And now I look closer and I see the Queen, but then I see something else. It turns out the Queen is basically chasing the swarm, and the swarm is chasing those full humans we were talking about. The humans are simply running like hell. They're trying to get away, and it turns out that it's true. They weren't attacking, they were running, and they're scared. The vehicles they're in are swerving in and out of all the debris, trying to get through without destroying the vehicles, yet this is slowing them down significantly. I worry for a second if they're going to be able to get out. I grab the radio. Being up as high as I am, it should reach, and I call in to the ground units trying to get to the refugees through the mines. They wave towards the refugees, trying to get them to slow down, to dodge the mines, but one of the vehicles simply blows through and explodes. Seeing this, the rest of them take notice and then follow the engineers out, but they have to go very slow to not trip any of their mines. And this is what the Queen and the swarm were waiting for. Not only did the explosion signal them, but now they simply were able to zero in. As the refugees are just now trying to clear the area, the artillery begins. We fly off as best we can, dropping a few of our own ordnance, and start cursing. I start yelling into the radio, "How about some warning next time, assholes?" I swear I could hear a few of them laugh, even without the radio. Unfortunately, we were way up in the sky, and I watched down as the swarm hit the minefield. The battle line on the other side of the minefield began to open up with their automatic weapons. They didn't really have to worry if their weapons didn't stop the bugs from getting in close, because we monsters, we can handle that. Many of them went in with their claws and talons, even teeth. A few, like the Minotaur, actually used tools, picking them up and swinging them around. Didn't matter if it was blunt weapons or something sharp. They would use it against the bugs that got close, usually breaking them or cutting them in half. The rest began tearing and clawing, crushing and biting, whipping with tails if they got 'em. Our centaur girl kept running around, dropping off all sorts of ammo whenever anyone needed it, or simply grabbing wounded and getting them to the rear, as she could move a hell of a lot faster than the rest of us. The Queen continued to advance through all of this as nobody was focusing on her. The artillery was landing on her back, actually, and walking her forward, forcing her forward. Yet, because the artillery, she was tucked into her shell, it was going to be difficult as she reached the minefield itself. The artillery continues to hit as the minefield goes off, and one blew up right under her head. Not direct, but close enough. The Queen begins thrashing in pain, and the swarm gets really nasty. They begin to charge forward even as their legs are blown off, some losing their heads and still coming forward. It was getting very, very nasty. And we tried as flyers, we tried everything we could to get close. We started throwing our grenades down, trying anything to stop the horde as it got closer. We came to the rear as many of them seemed to be wrapping around the Queen to try to protect her, but unfortunately, our munitions were almost completely ineffective. The incinerating devices we dropped, and also a couple Molotov cocktails, seemed like a waste of good whiskey. Every time they simply burst into flames on her carapace, she didn't even seem to notice. The incinerator grenades just turned into a light show. The Queen then hits another mine and loses a full leg with that one. Then she realizes that she's somewhere that's going to make a whole lot of pain, so she starts to thrash around even more, twisting left and right and left and right, and it seems as though she's trying to figure out which way to turn, almost like a deer in the headlights. She doesn't know which way to go, and then She turns and hits another mine, and with this, she's extremely pissed. And then she begins to charge. Because of the fact she's angry, she got angry and she got stupid. She extended her head out and extended her body up, showing her more squishy parts. This was what everyone was waiting for, what they were trying to bait her into. As she roared and started to move forward, suddenly a huge volley of high explosive anti-tank heat rounds came in and exploded her head, blowing all sorts of mucus and brain matter and skull carapace and all sorts of gooey shit all over everybody. Then she simply dropped. I was grateful that they used these rounds. I'm grateful they waited until the opportune moment, because I knew that these rounds were almost impossible to get their hands on now. They had no way of making any more, and they were very, very precious. At this point, we told everybody to save the bullets, but cover us. I yell for the flyers to follow me. I reach out, pull my bug blades, and I head straight for the center of the swarm. I dove down, but before I even hit the ground, I noticed something on the side. All the human forces began to withdraw. What? Why? I was too close to the ground to worry about that. As I landed, I spun on the ground, rolling to a stop, switching my blades around and using my tail as a whip, thrashing and clawing and biting if I had to, and my God, those things never taste good. Yuck! Swinging each blade right into the face, into the neck, taking legs off. Right beside me, to my right and left, all the flyers came down. Coming in from the battle line, here come all the felines, the canines. The Minotaur actually put his head down and charged right through. As it turns out, the bugs can't get through his thick hide. Holy crap, dude, what are you made of? He runs right behind me, and I see a whole bunch of the insects go flying. The insects not even caring anymore. With the queen down, they just care about killing and destroying anything in front of them. They're simply going nuts, sometimes meleeing themselves, as they don't even know who friend or foe is anymore. Their internal systems are completely gone, and because of that, I'm able to use the blades to make their internal systems become their external systems, as they end up being splattered on the ground. Around me, left and right, I can see the arachnids coming in, and boy, do they do some serious work. Even with their bodies looking extremely human and still very attractive, ladies, they're still able to act like spiders. They're wrapping up these bugs within moments, wrapping them and cocooning them completely. I didn't think they could encapsulate so quickly. It only took a few seconds, and then they would move on to another one. This thing still moving inside the cocoon. How are they doing that? You know what? I don't have time to worry about that. Here comes my next target. How about you take a blade to the brain? Hey, how you like that? Oh crap, the blade stuck. Well, I still got another one. Let's do this. And I kept thrashing and biting, and so did everybody else. And pretty soon, we began to tear everything apart, and nothing remained. After the battle, I was simply dripping in this disgusting insectoid blood. The spiders were grabbing pieces and simply upending them and pulling the muscle out of the carapace like you would actually eat a piece of crab. I knew how much they were disgusting, as I had a mouthful of the blood. Not that I wanted to. It's also all over my face and right up my nose. Ugh, disgusting. As we look around at the carnage, making sure we got them all, I look for the humans. They're gone. I yell to everybody else to finish with cleanup and make sure all the wounded are taken care of. I tell them I'm going to go to the sky and see if I can't get comms with all the humans. It takes a second, as I have to climb up the side of a building to get enough airflow under my wings so I can glide up. I'm able to finally get there, and I circle up, and I'm able to catch an updraft, which was really nice, but then it landed me on top of a tall apartment building that I had tried to forget about. I expected, when I landed, to have to look over the side and see a bloodstain on the street, an old bloodstain, and maybe some bones. Instead, when I landed, I could see almost in the center of this roof, there were old bones of a long deceased pile of filth. I would have laughed if it wasn't for the fact I was trying to stop myself from vomiting. I guess her pride wouldn't allow her to jump. Whatever. She deserved her fate, and I don't feel bad about it. I just don't want to look at it. I wasn't able to get anything on the comms at first, and then I climbed up on top of the highest point, which was the water tower, and I could see just enough. Something was going on. I continued to call over the radio, and then I received something. I received a panicked and broken message. What the hell's going on? I started screaming down for everyone to follow me! Take to the skies! Follow me! And the flyers began to climb up, and I told them to take the updraft on one side, and sure enough they did. As soon as we were together, I jumped off, took wind myself, and flew towards the base. Once we cleared the treetops, we could see what was going on, and what we saw is the epitome of, oh, crap. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me on this 33rd chapter of They Call Us Monsters. Before I go, I need to send some special thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those will be MTF Guard, Erica Gem, Guardian Sage, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, Sir, Chris Dixon, and Cause Lynn. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I will see you on the next one. This is Syntax, ejecting.